Glad you came back to kick it into sticks today. We're going to work on the flip screen. We got a little bit of contact going with flip screen. They gave us some directions on how to fix that. We had an issue with those locking bar mechanisms. This is an adjustable issue, so that is what we're going to do today. And I got my trusty sidekick here with me, Rikki. She needs to be inside of the track loader so she can lift the flip screen up for me and bring it up to a workable height. Once this boom is lifted up, you can't get out of the cab. Let's get to this and see if we can fix this thing. All right, Rikki, hop inside. They need you to take that joystick there. You need to push the park brake button. All right, now you're gonna lift this up, pull back on the joystick. Keep going. Perfect. Okay, now tip the joystick out to your right. Just a little bit. Awesome. All right, shut it down. So our little adjustment mechanism is behind this protective plate. So inside of here, I guess, is where our problem is. This little hydraulic cylinder is what also controls this lever or locking mechanism that keeps it in a locked position when you're ready to dig. Right now, this is set too close. There is absolutely no gap underneath here. There is supposed to be a 5mm gap, and there's nothing. This is tight up against the bucket of the flip screen. So inside here, there is a little grub screw, and I'm assuming that is on the side here of that little clevis that is on the end of the hydraulic ram inside there. Once I loosen up that grub screw, I am to turn the hydraulic ram to pull that clevis in, which will set the distance on that locking arm on the side. I really wish I could have been a little bit more helpful in showing more of this, but as you can see, I mean, this is my hand. That's the little space you have to work in. Right there is the shaft you want to adjust. And then this little clevis at the end here is going to thread up and down, and it's going to change the way that this locking bar actuates over here. All right, now on the right side of the unit, if you're looking from the operator's platform of the skid loader, so you're looking to your right side of the back side of the bucket here, you're gonna wanna turn that shaft down if you need to get the bar to swing further away from the side of your bucket. If you need to make that lock engage more, you're going to turn that shaft up, or in this direction would be clockwise. That will thread that clevis out further that way. It'll actually push that lock lever out some and push it down more at the bottom and engage it tighter up against the bucket. But in our case, it was already too tight against the bucket. So Rikki, go ahead and spin it backwards. So that's the hydraulic cylinder actuating there. And what that did, when that drew in, that drew that bar out away from the bucket and away from those two little plates of steel on the side of the bucket to unlock it and allow it to roll backwards. All right, now go ahead and slowly roll it forward, Rikki. Now you're gonna see the cylinder push out. All right, and now that has the lock hanging down and ready to lock in like it just did. Now to have this set right so that there's enough of a gap here, the instructions recommend that you have a 5mm gap between the steel bucket and the lock, which right now, as you can see, I can just slide that 5mm Allen wrench up in between there from the flat sides. Flat side of the Allen wrench up against the bucket, flat side up against this locking mechanism on the side. So I would call that as pretty good. Okay, Rikki, go ahead and swing it out again. Roll it back so you can see how that lock disengages. Okay, now roll it forward. Now you can see that lock, it's not scraping anymore, but now it just caught and locked in place. Now that we've got this clevis adjusted pretty much where I would say it would be a good spot, we're gonna lock it back in. So now when you take this apart so you can adjust this, you get a little, what they call a grub screw, and you have a little brass disc. So that little brass disc is just going to protect the threads, so that way that grub screw is not pushing tight on the threads and causing any unnecessary wear on the threads that would not allow you to adjust that hydraulic cylinder or hydraulic piston anymore. And it does recommend that you use Loctite once you put this back together. So I'm going to go grab a little bit of blue Loctite, which is not permanent and should be able to be broken loose fairly easily with just regular hand tools. Now, just for reference, the hydraulic ram that I adjusted in there, there's an end on there for a combination wrench. This will be a 12 millimeter. You're going to need a 4 millimeter Allen wrench to be able to get the grub screw out, and then it's a 5 millimeter wrench to get this cover plate off that protects the internal components of the working mechanism that drives that lock. Now, would you believe we still don't have that flip screen fully operational yet? The right-hand side was working just fine at the end of that night. You saw it in the video just a few moments ago. Everything was working perfectly. The bar was no longer scraping against the side of the bucket, and I wasn't peeling any more of that decal off. Later that night, my dad even came up just to see how things were going, and he was super excited to see that that locking bar on the right-hand side was working perfectly. I had the 5 millimeter gap. We ran several cycles forward and backwards with it, and the lock was working perfectly that entire time. However, on the left-hand side, I was never able to get that locking bar working properly. I had the clevis threaded all the way out to the end of the piston rod, to the point that the clevis was actually jammed up against the inside housing of the flip screen, and I still couldn't get that locking bar to engage the way that it should have. So my dad ended up contacting Flip Screen. They sent us an email and they said they wanted to see some pictures so they could kind of see what was going on and determine if they need to send out one of their techs to come up here and make some modifications or diagnose it themselves and see if they can make it work the way that it's supposed to. In that process, the next day, my dad came up here. I took the left side apart again. We took the pictures that we needed to take, and he started playing around with rotating the flip screen back and forth, and lo and behold, the right-hand side was doing exactly what it was doing before I made the modifications. It almost even seemed worse, which doesn't seem possible considering I had the 5 millimeter gap there before we put it away for that night of this video. However, now it's dragging right on that right-hand side of the flip screen bucket again and peeling decal up and doing all kinds of just nasty things that we don't want it doing. So we ended up following up and sent a letter back to, or sent an email back to Flip Screen, and they haven't gotten back to us just yet. He's reviewed the pictures, but he hasn't gotten back to us with a solution at this point. I'm expecting something coming up this week. We'll just have to see. However, they're not leaving us hanging high and dry. They're doing what they can at this point to help us diagnose the issue and come up with solutions, and worst comes to worst, they're going to send somebody up here and help take a look at things and figure out what exactly is going on. So it's apparent we have an issue bigger than just needing to adjust the piston rods at this point, seeing as how I had everything adjusted on the right hand side and working just fine, and now it's right back to where it was. All right, everybody, so we hope you all come back to kick it in the sticks, and we'll see you in the next one, hopefully with the flip screen working.